Welcome to another edition of the Scots Sports Show. I am your host, Tyler Trumbauer. We're going to kick today's show off with some more pigskin talk here on the Scots Sports Show, as we will be joined again by the duo that joined us last week on our season premiere. To my right, I have the play-by-play voice of Boro football and my broadcasting partner, Mike Fenner. And then also to the far side, we have head Edinburgh football coach Scott Browning joining us once again. Coach, we talked last week about the season overall and the Week 1 matchup against St. Joe's. For those that did not get the news or see the game, it was a 30-10 loss to the Pumas. What was your initial takeaway from that game? Big crowd, built it all up. You got to start at home for the first time since 2011, 2012, and unfortunately just couldn't get the win to just cap off the perfect night.
Yeah, I just felt that, early on we really didn't capitalize in some situations where I would have liked to have. And although we went in halftime, we had an opportunity to make it 10-10. Defensively, we didn't tackle real well. Offensively, we did nothing to sustain drives. We had one long drive of 10 plays or more. And I just think that we made a lot of young mistakes. And I think we faced a veteran football team, probably a little bit more veteran than what I anticipated going in, a very physical football team. And I think that I think if we can walk away and become a better football team from Week 1, I think it'll pay dividends in the end.
Yeah, I don't want to touch too much on the loss too much to keep looking forward, but I think one thing that the Pumas did really well was just their running game. You know, they talked about Shelton, the runner, but I think their quarterback was a tremendous runner as well, and he was such a threat, almost making it like a four-headed monster in the backfield. Did you really expect him to just be such a dominant rusher, both, designed and just eluding the defense too?
I think their quarterback has really grown up. I think he played exceptionally well. He managed the game for St. Joe, and he did an excellent job of running the football, throwing the football. The receivers outside that they replaced, they lost a couple receivers from the previous year, but I don't think it was a drop-off at all. I thought the quarterback really stepped up, though, and made a difference, and he's going to have a great year for him.
Building off of that, not just that element of it, but what other teaching tools do you feel like you could really take out of a game like that going forward into this week?
I think one of the things that, probably is unnoticed, staff-wise offensively, with Coach Watson being new and Jack Corey being new, it was the first time we really worked together. And the mechanics of the game afterwards, we sat down and had great discussion about how we have to do things differently. And I thought we got away from our offensive game plan that really hurt us, not only offensively but as a football team. And I think that we can make some corrections there that's going to help us down the stretch.
Last note on that first game, Jake Sisson, that was his second career start, and he's had a decent amount of snaps last year for a freshman in college football, but now this is his starting gig. That wasn't a spot start like it was last year. So what are your thoughts and takeaways from Jake's initial performance for 2015?
I thought the first start, obviously he missed a couple open receivers, but I think that's very common. But I think Jake does a good job of sitting back and evaluating himself and trying to evaluate what we do. And I think you're going to see Jake from game 1 to game 2, he's going to grow greatly. And I think his performance is going to pick up. Not a terrible performance, but definitely he's going to show improvement.
Certainly. So, and he will be able to, his first chance to show improvement will be this Saturday at home. Once again, a noon kickoff with the Shippensburg Red Raiders. Made that trip out east last year. Now they're coming to the Boro this year. What are your initial thoughts on that team? Obviously, that was a high-scoring affair last year, despite the rainy conditions we had. But they've lost a few guys, and obviously you have a different football team too. So, what are the thoughts going into that match?
When you look at Ship, first of all, you start with the quarterback. He's exceptional. He's good. It's a different offense. Now it's a spread offense. They're going to run the football. They're going to throw the football. They're going to give you multiple formations. They're going to try to get you off balance and try to create some mismatches. So it's a different challenge where last week it was more just a power run game. Defensively, they're very physical. They're not flashy. They do what they do. But they do it extremely well. They're very physical up front. They're very fast in the secondary. And it's going to be a physical PSAC football game.
Of course, Ryan Zapaticki, who you just referred to, the starting quarterback, is a guy you saw in last year's matchup as they went with two different guys coming off of a Week 1 performance, Eastern Division Offensive Player of the Week. Still a young guy, though. That was just his second career start last week. How do you plan on trying to rattle him as such a young and inexperienced guy?
Well, I'm counting on our defensive staff to come up with a great game plan. They're working hard on it, and I think they have some great ideas. And, you know, I don't know if you totally stop a guy like that, but you slow him down. And you try to force them to take snaps and make mistakes. And hopefully they don't put enough drives together and that we can shut them down enough that we can score more points than them.
What else did you really see that you noticed coming out of that tape? 64 points in their first game against Seton Hill, a conference opponent. What's the biggest threat in that offense, in your opinion?
Well, I think it starts with the quarterback. But they have receivers that can catch the football. They have running backs that are very good. They catch the ball. They run the ball. And the biggest thing is they just give you multiple formations, and they spread you out. But the multiple formations, they force you to defend an awful lot.
That they certainly do, Coach. And you had your handful last year, again this year. Offensively, you said you kind of got away from the offensive game plan. Is it going to be the same game plan this time, or is it going to be, you know, maybe a little bit tweaking because it's still Shippensburg? I know it's always the underlying theme is Boro football, which I don't think you perfectly executed like you wanted in that first week, correct?
We didn't. We got away from Boro football. You know, each week you change your offense so you can match up against a defense that you're going to face somewhat, but you also want to continue to do the things that you do well and utilize your personnel. And you know, that's what we have to do. We have to sit back, analyze things, analyze what they're going to give us defensively, and then within our system, we've got to be able to execute what we want to do.
With seeing Jamal Evillard come in on the final drive for you guys running the football so effectively, what should people expect to see out of the backfield with the look this week?
You know, we're going to rotate Jamal and Corey Bell more than we did last week. You know, Jamal had missed some practices, so he was a little bit behind. And we never got in a situation really where Corey Bell was tired. But hopefully this week we can run him a little bit more and or even throw him the football a little bit more and create a situation where we need to get Jamal out there. Jamal's a heck of a football player, and he'll be a great change-up for us.
Certainly, Coach, and let's see if Jamal and others can get more action and get, you know, more playing time and hopefully some more successful plays in this Saturday's matchup. Of course, that is Saturday at noon at Sox Harrison Stadium with the Fighting Scots against the Red Raiders of Shippensburg, which you can hear on WFSC 88.9 with Mike and I, EdinburghNow.com, or watch on ETV, EdinburghNow.tv if you want to, you know, catch the mug of head coach Scott Browning there on the sidelines, Coach. So good luck on Saturday, and thanks as always.
We appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys do. Thanks.
Appreciate it, Coach. And we'll be back on the Scots Sports Show as we continue along and talk some women's volleyball and preview their season, which is already underway. Welcome back to the Scots Sports Show. As we move away from football, we're moving into another fall sport which is already underway, and that is women's volleyball. I'm now joined by 3 members of the Edinburgh women's volleyball team. To my left, we have their head coach, Missy Soboleski, and to my right, I have a pair of players. To my immediate right, we have Sydney Trathen, and to my far right, we have a new addition to the Edinburgh women's volleyball team with Victoria Severo from the Charleston, West Virginia team, now transferred into Edinburgh. So a very nice addition to the Fighting Scots. Coach, let's kind of talk about Victoria right away, obviously getting her from an Atlantic region opponent and bringing her up to the Boro. So what does she kind of bring to the table that maybe you were missing last year?
We knew when she said that she was interested in transferring, if we were going to be able to make this happen, we knew that we were going to bring some very much needed speed and quickness to the middle. She hits the slide very well, which is something that we've been trying to incorporate more and more into our offense. Also, just her experience on the court, we knew was just going to help us just get further in that middle position than what we've been before.
Certainly, Sydney, in the locker room, obviously you had a unique perspective last year. You were the newcomer, but you also were right there in the starting lineup right away. So what does Victoria bring to the locker room and also on the court that maybe was missing last year?
I think we have a really good connection, especially like Coach said on the slide. We connected instantly this summer during volleyball camp, and after that, like, I knew she'd be really good for the team, and I knew we were going to get along really nicely, and I think she's done a lot already, and there's a lot more to come.
Certainly has made her name right away in the Hall of Fame City Challenge. Victoria, as we continue going around here, how do you feel in your first, few matches of the regular season and also already now getting months into being with the Edinboro program?
I'm just excited to be here. It's nice to come into a completely new team and feel comfortable right off the bat. Like Sid said, we have a really good connection starting off, so it wasn't that much of an adjustment. Obviously, we still have work to do, but I'm just excited and happy to be here.
Right, and obviously the record is showing of what is happening, and it's obviously positive stuff, 3-1 already, just through your first 4 matches at the Hall of Fame City Challenge. Coach, reflecting back on that, what did you take away from those first few matches positively, negatively about your ladies?
You know, going into the weekend, I really wasn't sure what to expect. I kind of knew where I thought we could end up and where we could get. Our ball control was better than what I anticipated. We were able to run the ball into the middle runs. We're running a little bit more of a complicated offense this year, and our ball control allowed us. So that was a nice surprise. In practice, it always, you know, it works in practice, but when you come up against a new opponent, stronger hitters, just a different blocking scheme against you, you wonder how you're going to be able to handle the ball control and trying to get that difficult offense run. And we did a nice job with that this weekend.
Sydney, obviously Coach said a more difficult offense than last year. Obviously you handled it well as Victoria getting on the all-tournament team and the ladies overall having a successful first few matches. How do you feel about the offense and the team overall so far this season?
Honestly, at first, I was a little nervous about trying this new offense. But once we were matching up against like Malone and the other teams at the Hall of Fame Challenge, it was working out really nicely. We had really good passes from our libero, Mara, and one of our outside hitters, Shallon. They had like phenomenal passes, and that really helped us run the offense, I think. Without that, it wouldn't have showed, I don't think.
Certainly, Coach, now going into this season, we really haven't previewed it quite yet here on the show. So obviously missing out on PSACs a year ago, but still making the NCAAs. Coming into this year, what are some thoughts, goals, expectations, kind of that mindset going into this season?
Oh, really, obviously, one of our major goals is always to make the PSAC playoffs. And, you know, again, I think this year, coming off of last year, this year I think we're stronger. I think we added more depth. We do have quite a few people on the team that can contribute, I think, this year, and it's going to be neat and exciting to kind of get to experiment and see what kind of different looks that we can give people.
Certainly, Victoria, interesting for you. You're finally going to go into your first season in the conference, in Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference, coming from Charleston. What do you kind of expect? It's a very difficult conference, especially in the Western Division. I mean, looking at last year record-wise, Edinboro would have been one of the top seeds in the East, but was left out in the Western Division. So, what are you kind of expecting play-wise going when we finally get into conference play here in a couple of weeks?
Well, like you said, I expected it to be a lot more difficult than my last conference that I was in. But just from like starting out, like I think our team clicks really well, and I think we're a really good team and have good chances of getting really far and doing really well.
Coach, you talk about that conference schedule, which seems to be so far away right now, especially when you ladies spend nearly the entire first calendar month of the season on the road. What is that like? I mean, obviously you have a hand in constructing the schedule. Is that a positive, a negative? What is kind of that like never being in Macomb Fieldhouse for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season?
It just pretty much means that we get our traveling done for the most part and out of the way. No, I actually do like going and playing at other places and getting ourselves into in the beginning of the year playing on the road. So if we can get some wins on the road and have a good start to our season, coming home only makes it easier. So it's when you finally get to come home, it's like, oh, we get to have our home matches, and it's the middle of the season, and those are the middle of the season. That's the time of the year that really, really matters, especially in the PSAC when you're having to play the West home and away. So I think it makes us realize that it doesn't matter what facility that we're in, we need to be able to win. And if you can win on the road, then I think you've got a shot of winning at home as well.
Certainly, regardless of where you're at, home, away, neutral site, Sydney, what are the ladies trying to accomplish this year? Coach obviously said getting into the conference postseason is a goal after missing out a year ago. But from the ladies, what are you girls talking about kind of in the locker room as goals for this season that you want to accomplish?
I'd say our goals are to definitely make it to PSACs this year. Like you said, we didn't make it last year, but I think it'd be really awesome if we made it this year. And also go back to NCAA playoffs. That was a really cool experience, even just being there only for the first round. I think we have a lot of options this year. I feel more so than last year, so I would think we have a really good chance of going farther into the NCAA playoffs than last year. So I'm excited.
And we'll see if that gets done, of course, as the ladies are already off to a great start to achieve those goals with a 3-1 record so far through 4 matches. And, of course, they'll be on the road for a while. I believe their first match is against Damon College of New York later this month in September. So mark your calendars on that one. Thanks for joining me today, ladies, and good luck the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll talk soon. As the Scott Sports Show rolls along after this, we're going to continue into another fall sport, which is already underway, with the men's and women's cross-country teams. We'll be right back. The cross-country season officially got underway last Saturday at the Doug Watts cross-country course right across the street from the Highlands here on the campus of Edinboro University. And that was a very successful one for the Fighting Scots cross-country squads, as they both had individual winners and overall just kind of stacked the top 5 in both the men's and women's races. To dissect that and preview the rest of the season, I'm now joined by a couple members of Edinboro's cross-country program. To the far left, I have head men's and women's cross-country coach Rick Hammer, and then to my immediate right, a new member of the women's cross-country team, Ida Narbuvoll. So thank you both for joining me. I appreciate that. Coach, let's start off with the Doug Watts Distance Gala on Saturday, a very successful meet overall for Edinboro. What was kind of your expectations going in? Obviously, I'm sure you dream about the finishes that they had, but did you expect to have Edinboro show up so many times in the top 5 in both races?
You know, I've been watching their practices since mid-August. I knew we had the potential to be a pretty good team, and I think we showed that we have a lot of strength up front that I don't know that everyone in the conference is going to expect us to have, both with Ida coming in as a newcomer on the women's side and also Abby Lang from out of New York. You know, we had 2 freshmen in our top 4 on the women's side. So on the men's side as well, we looked great through 3. Our challenge over the next several weeks as we approach the meets that really matter is to kind of develop that 5th runner on the women's side and a 4 through 7 on the men's.
Ida, going for you to the women's race, obviously you were the winner of that race, earning you the Female Scot of the Week accolade, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Your first race at Edinboro and then obviously taking the win. What was your mindset going in? Were there nerves? What were you thinking before, during, and then after the race?
Since this is my first real race in America, I didn't quite know what to expect from the others. I knew what the other girls on the team could do approximately, but I didn't know the other girls from the other teams. But I thought that I just had to try my best to run hard from the start and see if anyone dared to follow. And one of the girls did. So, and she was a very good uphill runner, and I'm better on the flats and the downhills. So it was a very tough race. I think it's one of my toughest races ever, also because of the heat. I'm not used to temperatures like that.
You don't
coming
have to
from
get used
Norway.
to it here. I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
That's few and far between there.
Yeah, I kind of hope so. Also, so yeah, I had to fight all the way, and but it was fun. It was very fun to get the season started and also do so well. Of course, that's very fun.
Always more enjoyable when you win. I mean, I wouldn't know too much about that, but I'm sure it does. Coach, going into the men's race, Elliot obviously enjoyed himself. He won the men's race, earning him Male Scot of the Week. We'll hear from him later on in today's program. But talk about him and the men's race and how he's matured. I mean, he's going to be one of those top guys you're looking at this year to lead your program.
Well, definitely. Elliot's one of our leaders on the course up front, and he's just a good story about the development that can occur as a distance runner at Edinboro that buys into the program and the system and the long-term approach to distance running. You know, he ran as a true freshman during Coach Watts' last season coaching here, did not even make their PSAC roster, which was the top 10 in the program. So, and then my first year, you know, he had a great season for us. Probably made a coaching error not putting him on the line at nationals as a sophomore, but it is what it is, and I think that's really kind of fueled his development to where he's he's on that short list in my mind, certainly as a potential All-American and one of those guys that could really challenge up front if everything goes his way in November.
So obviously that was the first event of the season, but heading into this season, obviously a lot of high hopes by you guys and a lot of high expectations from the PSAC as well, being ranked 2nd and 3rd respectively for your women's and men's teams coming in to this season. So the coaches feel the same way, that you guys are one of the favorites coming into this season. Your mindset, what is to come hopefully from 2015 for Edinburgh Cross Country?
Well, I certainly believe in the young talent that we've recruited over the last couple of years. It's just we're a very young roster. On both sides, we'll graduate one girl this year and one girl the following year after that. On the men's side, we'll graduate 3 this year and 0 after that. So we're just counting on a lot of people to kind of develop through the process of the season and learn what it's like to run in college. Some of these guys that are running very well for us, I think, as true freshmen. Their racing distance has doubled from what it was last fall in high school. So, that's probably the biggest challenge we face. We've got some great front runners and some great potential to add depth to those front runners. It's just who's going to develop out of our group.
Certainly. You're already one of those front runners coming in, and of course more development to come for the women's team. Overall with the women, how do you feel about that squad? Obviously, this is just your first race, but how do you feel about your teammates and what you can do as a unit this year?
Yeah, I think we can do well. Of course, I've only been there for like 3 weeks, so. But my impression is that we can do well as a team, and especially since it's a couple of months until the really important races are. So. Yeah, I really think we can do well.
Now, Ida, you talked about that, Coach. You mentioned it. The really important races, of course, that is in allusion to the PSAC championships, the Atlantic Regional race, and then obviously leading into the Super Bowl of them all, the national meet, obviously, this year in Missouri. So the PSAC is going to be at Slippery Rock this year. The regionals at Lock Haven. So what is going to be kind of the pathway taken to that? Obviously, you're going to, build your training program up to be your best at that time. Wrestling says the same thing about nationals and be ready for March. So from a cross-country standpoint, what are you kind of telling your runners, Coach, to get themselves prepared so that they can be performing at their best when it's time to go to Slippery Rock and Lock Haven?
Well, we've had a couple meets at home so far where we've really kind of a baptism of fire, I would say, for some of our freshmen and transfers as to what it's like to run an 8,000-meter course and to run it hard. Our course is pretty unforgiving. There's some pretty challenging hills back there if you've ever been back there walking or running the course. And we kind of designed the course for these last 2 meets to really have them focus on hills because they will be a crucial part of our success. Both at Slippery Rock for the conference meet and as well as at nationals in Missouri. So as we head into our next couple meets, both at Michigan State and then down in Louisville, those will probably be some of the more talented meets at that particular day in the season. I would argue anywhere in the nation. So I mean, it's a good opportunity for us to really test ourselves and to see how we stack up against teams like Michigan State that won the Division I Women's National Championship last year. Grand Valley State was the Division II national champ, and Hillsdale was the women's runner-up. And they'll all 3 of those will be at Michigan State, and 2 of those 3 will be at Louisville. So it's a good chance to see where Ida fits in individually and where the team can compare to them. Don't want to worry too much about where we fit into them at this point of the season, but it will give us a good measuring stick that if we develop a 5, how we can compare come November.
Certainly, obviously good to look, outward and also in the mirror a couple of times throughout the season. Ida, for you, what's going to be that development like? Obviously interesting because you're kind of just going through it all the first time. This is kind of just going to be a gauntlet, going to kind of figure things out as you go. So yeah. What are your kind of thoughts and your game plan to progress yourself moving into PSACs, regional and nationals?
Of course, it's just to adapt to the American system here, because since I'm from Norway, I'm used to things being done in a bit different way. Also, I've never run on a high school team like most of the runners here, so it's also to adapt to the college situation. But and other than that, I think it's just to do the work, train hard and train smart. I think that's the key to run fast. That you have to run fast and run smart. And
can't say it any better myself. There you go. I think that's a perfect one to end on. Run fast, run smart, and I mean, just run in general. I mean, I don't do it, but that's what these people are all about. So the cross-country team, unfortunately, done with their home schedule. They get it out right away. You know, they expect 80 degrees in Edinburgh because it'll be 40 next week. So they're going to get that done. They're going to head out to all states across the country, so stay tuned with them. Their first one is going to be next Friday at the Spartan Invitational at Michigan State, where Coach mentioned a lot of cross-country national powerhouses will be participating, so follow them on GoFightingScots.com, and of course, all right here on the Scots Sports Show. So thanks for joining me, Coach Anita, and good luck, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon. Appreciate it. So we'll be right back after this to wrap things up, talk about the upcoming schedule events, and highlight the Scots of the week, who we already know are Ida and Elliot. Congratulations to Elliot Martynkiewicz and Ida Narbuvoll of the men's and women's cross-country teams for being named the inaugural men's and women's Scots of the Week for their accomplishments and finishes at this past Saturday's Doug Watts Distance Gala, the lone home meet for the cross-country teams this season. Elliot finished with a 25-10, winning the men's race, so earning a nice individual finish to start off the year. And Ida, who we just talked to earlier with head coach Rick Hammer, posted a 17-14 to lead a nice group of Edinburgh Fighting Scots across the finish line in the women's races. So congratulations to both of them. As we continue on, let's take a look at the upcoming schedule of events for the Fighting Scots. Moving along now, of course, starting on Friday, women's soccer has a pair of home games this weekend, starting on Friday with the with Shippensburg Red Raiders coming on in at 1 p.m. and then continuing on, women's volleyball starts off at the Virginia State Tournament with matches on Friday and Saturday. Moving into Saturday in the official weekend, football, as we talked to head coach Scott Browning earlier, kicks off at noon against the Red Raiders of Shippensburg, as both the women's soccer and football teams are making trips to the Boro this year. And then also continuing on, volleyball more into the afternoon, and then also women's soccer welcomes Millersville at 5 p.m. to Sox Harrison Stadium, so a doubleheader of action at Sox Harrison on Saturday with football at noon and women's soccer at 5 p.m. So be sure to head out and support the Fighting Scots this year, and this weekend, more importantly. That's all the show we have for this week. Thanks for watching, and go Boro.